Research Manager for Blue Star Families. And today we are going to have a great conversation that is based on transitioning our military kids from one school to another. This is a topic that's near and dear to everyone's hearts who's on this program, ours as well. My husband served for 21 years. We moved our girls around 16 times in that time period. And transitioning military kids has been a top issue for a number of years with our annual military family lifestyle survey. So we know it's important to all of our military families. As a matter of fact, the majority of those active duty family respondents in our survey have children who are eligible to be enrolled in K through 12. And as you know, as many of us have experienced, military children are more mobile than their civilian peers. In our 2019 MFLS survey, our active duty families reported that at least 44% of their oldest children had transitioned schools 3 or more times due to their military life, and another 28% of our active duty family respondents said that their oldest child had transitioned 4 or more times. So today, as I had mentioned, we have a great panel that's going to discuss various topics around military children's education and the transition from school to school. Our facilitator today is going to be Tanya Murphy. Tanya is a mother of 3 boys, ages 9, 13, and almost 16. She's been an active duty Navy spouse of over 18 years. She has a background in counseling and working in schools, and she enjoys using the knowledge she has gained over the years to help smooth the educational transition for military kids and their parents. She recently joined Blue Star Families as the Lockheed Martin National Capital Region Deploy Fellow. So Tanya, I'm going to turn today's conversation over to you.
Thank you so much, Kim. I am so happy to be here today. This is, as Kim said, an issue that is near and dear to my heart because this is something that we all encounter. I'm excited to introduce our great group of panelists to you guys. We're going to start with Ben. He is a U.S. Marine veteran, husband, and father to 3 kids. He is a speaker, coach, and podcaster, and he launched his podcast, Military Veteran Dad, in 2019. He's a stay-at-home dad and coach, and he's spending quality time with his family while still working hard and helping others. He now focuses on helping high-performing men with thriving business lives find balance with their family lives. Thank you for joining us today, Ben. Next on our panel, we have Kelly. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm really excited to connect with everybody in this topic.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kelly. Kelly is an active duty Air Force spouse of over 13 years, and she has 2 kids. Kelly is an experienced homeschooling parent and has been working remotely for over 3 years. Kelly is currently the Amazon Food Insecurity Deploy Fellow here at Blue Star Families. Thanks, Kelly, for joining us. We also have Brittany joining us. Brittany is an active duty U.S. Marine Corps spouse. She and her husband have 2 beautiful little girls. Brittany's prior roles include Teach for America teacher, DC area school counselor, and case manager for exceptional family members through the Y. Her passion is helping underserved children and adolescents thrive in school and life in general. She is currently the J.P. Morgan Chase Financial Wellness Deploy Fellow at Blue Star Families. Hi, Brittany. Next up, we have Nicole. Nicole is an active duty Navy spouse and mother of 2 school-age children. She has several years of informal education and public outreach experience in library, museum, and interpretive spaces, developing and supporting public outreach programs, inspiring young people, and building up resilient future leaders while creating relationships and connecting communities. She is now working to bring military families together in outdoor spaces through the Blue Star Parks program as the Parks Deploy Fellow. And last but definitely not least on our panel, we have Georgia, who is here with MSEC. She is the Director of Planning, Analysis, and Evaluation with the Military Child Education Coalition. That's always a mouthful for me. Her work focuses on evaluating and refining MSEC programs and services to make sure military-connected children have the best and most supportive educational experiences. She is also an educator with experience teaching military-connected children. Like I said, again, thanks everyone for being here. We have got a really great panel put together, and we want to hear from everyone because everyone on this panel has such great experience and insight to add to our discussion. So we've crafted a few questions aimed at everybody's different expertise areas, and then we're going to share some resources at the end for our viewers. Topics we're going to cover today include recent PCS, particularly PCSing during this COVID-19 pandemic. The Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission, also known as the MIC3, and Military Child Education Coalition, how they work together, and learning more about some of the resources that MSEC has for our families. Offering our children and our families emotional support as we're going through all of these transitions. There's a lot of moving pieces to it, and we need to make sure that we're supporting our children emotionally as well as through academically. We're going to look at the dad experience. Thanks to Ben for joining us and giving that insight. And we're going to explore solutions and options to help ease the transitioning, including looking at homeschooling. And then finally, we'll end up with some top tips from our panelists. Everyone, like I said, everyone has a great breadth of experience, and so we want to hear their number one tip that they would offer out to families. We will be, in the end, we'll be sharing some resources with you all, and hopefully, if we have time, we're going to get to some Q&A from the audience. But please feel free to add questions into the chat, even as we're having this discussion. Alrighty, so I am, as was shared, I'm an active duty spouse as well. My husband's been in for about 18 years, and our latest PCS landed just before COVID, right? So it makes it seem as though we kind of hit a lucky spot, not moving during the pandemic. But I don't know how familiar everyone is with PCSing, but I always say it takes us about 6 months in order to get settled into a new space. We moved in October of 2019, and everything shut down in March of 2020. Quick math tells you that was just under 6 months. So my kids had not really established those friendships. We hadn't established ourselves in the community. And so I know how hard that was for us to kind of find our footing, even though we weren't physically moving our location, but just kind of getting settled all over again. From our 2020 Military Family Lifestyle Survey, we learned that the top 3 challenges experienced as a result of PCS during COVID for all active duty families with school-age children were enrolling in the new school, fear of exposure to COVID-19, and gaps in education. Now, Nicole, I know your experience was a little bit different because you guys did move during the pandemic. So how was this PCS different from previous moves for you in terms of your children's schooling and getting settled with the challenges of COVID-19?
Thanks, Tanya. You know, interestingly, one way or another, this move would have been different for us because in our last PCS, it happened during a summertime where it was just this really easy transition from one school at the end of the school year to another school in September, and it felt really natural. Also, we only had one child as a school-age kiddo at that point in time. He had just finished kindergarten, and it was really simple to kind of just like move him into first grade. But this PCS kind of really changed the game for us. So not only were we moving in the middle of the pandemic, and we were dealing with issues of how do we enroll in a new state? What are the different things that we have to do in terms of connecting with the right medical professionals? How do we, make sure that we have all of the right forms turned in ahead of time? And then more than that even was how are we going to make sure that we keep our kids protected from COVID-19? We came from Washington State. There, we still had not had any opportunities for in-person learning at all when we left in February. And here in Virginia, where I'm located, many schools had already moved back to a hybrid model with both in-person and online opportunities for learning. While I was very concerned about exposure to COVID-19 for my children, I also understood that the past year had been really, really difficult, especially on my first grader, who had still not been able to grasp a lot of the benchmarks in education that we would expect by halfway through first grade. And a lot of that was attributed to her not feeling comfortable in the online schooling setting. And so I had big choices to make in terms of whether or not I was going to send my kids to school in person or I was going to keep them online. It also was a really different experience for us because this was the first time that we had to deal with moving state to state with special education requirements. My son, Max, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes while we were living in Washington State. And we had a 504 plan set up for him, which we needed to be able to get a new 504 plan set up for him in the state of Virginia, which took additional efforts. And, it was not the easiest thing to be able to navigate, especially in a very short amount of time. So all of those things kind of combined made a really stressful scenario for us. And I think that I spent a good amount of time while we were PCSing, sending emails back and forth from the schools. How do I do this? What comes next? How do I make sure that my kid is going to get the care that he needs during school? Just trying to navigate that was pretty challenging for us. So, every PCS is different. Every PCS comes with its own challenges, but this PCS, moving in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of a school year, was a real test of our abilities.
I hear that. That sounds really stressful, as though, moving is not stressful enough. And you hit on a really key point. From our 2019 survey, active duty family parent respondents reported that although the majority of students felt welcome in their new school, 1 in 4 report that their oldest child was not placed in equivalent courses and the school was not flexible when it came to course placement. So talking about 504s and IEPs and getting all of that set up, it can be a real challenge, especially when you're moving across the country and you're not able to just go in the building physically and say, hey, this is what I need. Can you give me, the documentation that I need?
Yeah,
Georgia.
It can be a real challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And, that's a great place where MSEC fills in a lot of the blanks. So, Georgia, can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect when we're moving our children to another school? And what are some of the resources that MSEC provides to help with this transition?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Tanya. And thank you to Blue Star Families and the other speakers today for the opportunity to discuss ways to support military-connected students in transition. So we know that moving your child to a new school can be challenging. We asked parents, education professionals, and students about the challenge associated with these transitions on our 2020 Milkids Now education survey. And the responses largely fell into 2 categories: academic challenges and social emotional challenges. So the most common academic challenges across those 3 roles were being unprepared for curriculum differences, addressing variations in state academic standards, and moving mid-school year. The social emotional challenges captured in our survey reported by students, parents, and education professionals were also similar across the 3 roles, and they were largely concerned with feelings of acceptance and fitting in, making friends, managing stress, and dealing with parent deployment and reunion. These responses tell us that we have more work to do to assist military-connected students and their teachers and families in navigating these frequent school transitions associated with military life. The good news is MSEC has many resources to support military families as they make these school transitions. So I want to take some time to tell you about a few of our most relevant opportunities related to transition. The first is SchoolQuest. One of our best tools to support families as they PCS and navigate school change is SchoolQuest. It's a web-based tool where you can create profiles for each of your children and plan and track their academic progress and goals. You can indicate an upcoming PCS in SchoolQuest and use the tool to help explore school options and choices in your new location, as well as identify and store necessary registration documents. You can also use checklists within the tool to make sure your child is on track for graduation and beyond. And this amazing tool is available free to all users thanks to the generosity of the USAA Foundation. Our SchoolQuest flyer is available for you in today's resources, and the platform is available on the MSEC website. MSEC is also the national advocate for Purple Star schools. Many states have adopted legislation for Purple Star schools, and schools with the Purple Star distinction or award have demonstrated commitment to serving military-connected students and families. And choosing to enroll your child in a Purple Star school could help ease some of the burdens of military-related school changes. For more information about Purple Star schools, you can review the Purple Star School handout in today's resources or visit MSEC's Purple Star School webpage. MSEC also has military student consultants who can provide individual support to families and educators via our call center or webpage. These professionals provide one-on-one support via phone and email and can connect callers to resources and supports within 24 hours of initial contact. More information about military student consultants is also available in today's resources or on the MSC webpage on the MSEC website. Lastly, MSEC has a wealth of additional resources related to the military lifestyle and school transitions, including parent support webinars, parent workshops, professional development opportunities, the MSEC podcast, and our student-to-student transition program. More information about and access to all of these resources is available on our website, militarychild.org.
Thank you so much, Georgia. That's a lot of really great resources shared with us. I love it. One resource that I know that you guys have kind of been involved with, but is not necessarily directly from you guys, is the Military Interstate Children or Compact Commission. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and what it isn't, so that our users, our viewers who might be kind of familiar with it can get a better idea?
Certainly. So the Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission, or as it's also known, MIC3, is an agreement between all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and the Department of Defense Education Activity to help ease the burden of frequent school transitions for military-connected children. It covers active duty members, including National Guard and Reserve on active duty orders, veterans, medically discharged or retired for 1 year, members who died on active duty for 1 year after death, and uniformed members of the Commissioned Corps of NOAA and the USPHS. I also want to give you an idea of what the compact covers with respect to educational transitions. So it covers enrollment, including transfer of educational records, immunizations, and kindergarten and first grade entrance ages. It covers placement and attendance, including course and program placement, special education services, placement flexibility, and absence related to deployment activity, eligibility for student enrollment in school and for extracurricular activity participation. And it covers graduation, including course waivers for previously completed courses and testing flexibility for course exams. Each state has a commissioner or representative that can assist military families with compact-related issues, and families can ask for help first by reaching out to their installation school liaison and then the commissioner in their school. More information is available for you at mic3.net, including resources available to share with parents or educators. And I also saw a question in the chat, does it include DODC's schools overseas? And I believe, yes, it does. All Department of Defense Education Activity schools have signed on to the compact.
That is awesome. What a great tool for families as they're moving and, you know, facing down this stress of how am I going to get my kid in an equivalent class? How am I going to get everything transferred? We know that all of this change can be stressful for adults, but this is also true for kids, right? In fact, from our 2019 Military Family Lifestyle Survey, 59% of active duty family parent respondents felt teachers and staff should receive training to help them gain a general understanding of the impact of frequent moves on my child, your child, on these military connected kids, so that they can better serve them. Brittany, as an educator who's worked as a classroom teacher and as a counselor, how can parents best advocate for their children's unique PCS experiences when they arrive at a new school or area?
Thank you so much, Tanya, for asking that question. I think that's great. Especially for parents, when you're moving to a new area, it's important to advocate for your child, but also know that your child is very resilient. And children are just naturally resilient, and they can overcome challenges a lot better, sometimes more even than adults. But as far as advocating, definitely making sure that you go to your school liaison to get information. Definitely making sure that you connect with the school counselor. I am really biased because I was a school counselor, but that is our job as school counselors to make sure that children feel comfortable in their new environments, and especially military children that are coming into a new school environment. So it's definitely important to make sure that you talk to the school counselor about what your child is experiencing, and hopefully having that school counselor meet with your child one-on-one is a possibility as well. And also advocating for other military kids. You can have the school counselor possibly create small groups for your specific community of military children in order to address some of the stress and different things and different challenges that they're experiencing as they're coming into a new school and as they're coping with different emotions and different challenges. So definitely make sure that you go to your school counselor. In addition to that, making sure that you connect with the school social workers and behavioral therapists that are in the building, especially if your child is listed as an EFM. That is hugely important, and making sure that you go to the special education teachers, making sure that they understand what's in the IEP or the 504 plan, wherever you have, making sure that they have a copy of it. All of those things are forms of advocacy that are hugely important when your child is transitioning into a new environment, and not being afraid to email these leaders, go up to them and say, hey, this is my child, this is what they're struggling with, that we're coming from another environment. Also getting the principal involved and not being afraid to show your face at the school. And even right now with COVID, there are possibilities to meet with the principal. And if you can't, then definitely email them and let them know your situation. And if none of them respond, continue to email until you get a response, and don't give up, because that is our job as advocates for our children. So that is what I would say about that. And also, as Nicole was saying, making sure that you find your EF&P liaison. I know sometimes it can be difficult when you're going into a new post or duty station to locate, but then making sure that you go to the next nearest duty station to find that EF&P liaison, and then hopefully that EF&P liaison can connect you to yours at your base. So just making sure, I know there's a lot of hoops to jump through, but just making sure that you're hitting all of those points are forms of advocacy.
You're right that it can feel like a lot of jumping and box checking. I love the message that you have about staying resilient and just persistent in that advocacy and being that voice for your children. It's important also, I think, that while we're supporting them in their school environment, that we're supporting them at home as well, right? So in your experience, in your opinion, how can we best support our children emotionally before, during, and after each of these moves?
So before I address that, I saw someone stated that they were a high school teacher, and they said that it was important that sometimes to let the teacher know directly that you are military. I would definitely agree with that. So Tracy, thank you for putting that message in there. That is definitely an awesome way to advocate as well. Making sure that you connect with your teacher one-on-one and let them know, like, hey, my child is a military dependent. We're new. This is what they're experiencing, because teachers are on the front line every single day. So kudos to every teacher out there. And thank you again, Tracy, for that. As far as your next question, Tanya, as far as supporting kids emotionally, something that I am a huge advocate for is zones of regulation. Just making sure that you check in with your children. And the zones of regulation is basically a tool that school counselors use, but I definitely use it with my own children to check in on their emotions. And so the different colors are associated with different feelings. And you can have a poster board, you can have sticky notes in your house, you can have it as a word. That's what we do. That's what I do with my children. I'm saying, hey, how are you feeling today? And my daughter would tell me, Mommy, I'm in the blue zone, or Mommy, I'm in the red zone. And so essentially what that means is if you're in the blue zone, that means you're kind of bored, you're tired, you're not really feeling it. If you're in the green zone, you're happy, you're calm, you're having a great day. Yellow zone, that kind of means you're frustrated, you're worried. And also red, of course, is definitely associated with being mad and angry. And so just checking in with your children periodically as they're learning about this move, if they're not willing to talk or give you many emotions, because a lot of our little ones, they can't really express. And sometimes our high schoolers, they don't want to say anything. They're really quiet. and want to express things to other adults. So you can use it as like a code word, like, hey, what zone are you in today? I'm in the red zone. And then you can ask your child, do you want to tell me more about that? And if not, then, okay, I'll give you time to sit and processing your emotions. And I think that's something that's also important. Letting our children sit in their emotions and process them. If they're sad about PCSing, if they're sad about going to a new school, then allowing them to have that emotion is totally normal. They're human, just like we are. And even as adults, sometimes we're sad to relocate. I know I was sad to relocate and leave DC and come to San Diego. And I had to sit in that emotion. And my daughter also tells me every day she's sad and she wants to go back, and I have to let her process and sit in that. So that's important. And then reassuring them throughout the process, like, it's going to be okay. We're going to make it. We're going to do our best. We're going to transition and do all that we can to make sure that this move goes well. It's something that's also important. And also, when you have older ones, a lot of the older ones are into Instagram, technology, social media. They're into video games. And I think it's important to get involved in those things with them, right? So if you have a child that does video games, sit down with them and do the video games with them, and then begin to ask questions. Hey, how are you feeling about our upcoming move? How are you feeling about going into a new school? When you're doing activities with children, they're more inclined to share their emotions because they feel like you're in it with them. So that's another tip that I would give in order to check in with children. But if it gets to a point where you're really seeing some externalizing behavior, like they're really angry, they're, shouting, they're really upset, then that's when I would say definitely go into counseling. You have Military One Source that gives you free counselors. To add a little bit of diversity to this conversation, you have therapy for Black girls, you have therapy for Black kids, you have diverse therapists that have their own platforms now that you can research. And a lot of these resources will be provided to you all. Those are different avenues that you can use in order to get counseling for your children if you feel that it gets to a point, or even before that. Just having them have their own therapist is a healthy form of self-care and a healthy form of them being able to talk to someone outside of you. So those are some tips and strategies that I can give when it comes to that.
Brittany, I am over here giving you all the snaps. You hit so many things. With me having older kids, there were a few different things that really hit me. First of all, therapy. I have my therapist. My son has his therapist. It's so important to really allow that to happen and hold space for that. And then also when you were talking about doing an activity with your older child and having them talk to you kind of as you're doing that. My oldest, as we said before, is almost 16. So he doesn't want to always sit down with me and have these like long talks, right? That's not what we want to do. But something that's really fun that's happening in my house, this is one of those really fun moments of parenting, is that my oldest is learning how to drive. And so one of the really cool things that we're getting to do is that my husband and I are getting to spend more time with him one-on-one as we're teaching him how to drive, because we don't put the whole family in the car because, but we're finding that as we're driving, he's focusing on what he's doing, but we also get the opportunity to talk to him about things we wouldn't normally do. And I know that's especially special for my husband because he has, he's the active duty service member. And so he hasn't gotten to be, there for a lot of the kind of smaller moments. And so this is a special thing for them. Then looking, turning to you, when we're talking about all this, typically a lot of times we're picturing the moms doing this, right? And we're seeing mom having these conversations and things like that. But this is definitely something where dads also play an integral role. So can you share with us from a dad's perspective, what is it like to transition a child into a new school due to a PCS move? And how does all this look from the dad's side?
Well, I think from the dad side, the problem that we often get caught up in is that we're almost doing two massive changes. The dad is going through this change. If he's the one that's serving in the military, he's trying to figure everything out, process everything. And once he gets there, he's got to try to reintegrate. He's got his whole world to try to figure out. But then he's also got this space for family. And family is also something he loves, appreciates, is part of his life. And integrating those two is a real struggle that military dads struggle to. It's almost like we keep a firewall in between them, because in some cases, depending on the unit, you may not even feel like it's okay to have a family. There's certain times you have that emotion where like the family is just this extra thing. And so that is an important emotion to just recognize, is that there, are you understanding it? But I think the most important part, and I think this is where we think it's an or statement, that we're this person at work and then we're a dad at home, but it's really an and statement. We're both this person in both moments, where this shared identity can really come through. And I think what's really important through all of this is to create a shared experience. And what I mean by that is a shared experience being that you open up to your family about what maybe you're struggling with at work, to kind of create that initial vulnerability to your family to say, this is what I'm kind of struggling with. Because depending on the ages of your kids, if they're anything over than probably like 8, they're probably going to be able to share a similar vulnerability at their level of something that they're struggling with. And there's a lot of power from when a dad opens up and goes first. He kind of gives this safe place for his kids to go second. And the other thing that goes with this is when you create a shared experience, you're building empathy. And when you can build empathy to understand that your kids understand that, like, we've got a lot going on at work, this is what's going on, this is what I'm having a hard time with. And then you create this opportunity for your kids to understand what they're going through. That is almost like this empathy bridge. And a lot of times, if we create that firewall, your family could be moving at one lane within that, say, of interstate, one speed, and they're having their own problems, and you're trying to deal with your problems at work, and you don't have this conduit to talk about different things. And you almost get at different paces. Maybe your transition at work is going really well, but it's a complete mess at home. But if you don't have that understanding and the ability to create a shared experience, one of them is going to get ahead and behind each other. And then it's just going to create this tension, animosity, and sometimes even resentment from the kids, and could be from the spouse even, towards you, of like, you did this to us because we're moved. And then you're in this place like, how do I even get out of it? So it is this kind of this tricky area to navigate. And it can feel a little bit like a landmine on a warfield, because you don't often know where to step. Now, if you've done PCS and quite often, then you've probably been here before and probably realized, like, each time it's almost new. But that shared experience is really important. And I think something that we often overmiss an opportunity to create this in a very simple way is bedtime talk. So this is something that I do with my kids, and my kids are under 9. So this is really early on in the idea of raising kids, but I've already seen dividends in how my kids bring things to me. And so at bedtime, I sit down with each one of my kids, and my kids are 5, 6, and 7, and 9. And so they all have different stages of what they bring. But in those moments, they bring me something that maybe I had at the bad day, or something that happened on a playground, some issue, or we talk about a behavior that's really not in the right way, something that went wrong. Or as a dad, I can also model what's going right in their world and say, I appreciate what you did today. Or I could admit a mistake in my world. And it creates this really super safe spot where dad becomes vulnerable, maybe apologizes, and your kids will apologize. And you can talk about what went right, what went well. And then it almost kind of is this place where the kids will decompress before going to bed. And so when they lay their head down on their pillow, they're going to, like, they have that piece of, like, we've talked about it, I can move on tomorrow. Because kids let go very easily, but it can be sticky unless they let it go. So bedtime talk is a really great way for a dad to create that shared experience, to understand what their kids are going through. And there's an important concept buried within this that even applies outside PCSing, of being there for the little things, so later in life, they bring you the big things. And it kind of, the biggest way to extrapolate this to is, if your kids get in a car accident, that's a huge moment that they have to grow up, call their dad or mom and say, Mom or Dad, I'm in a car accident. The trust that they bring to that moment is built when your kids are younger. And all these little micro moments happen in these little places where you're being tested. Are you showing up in the moments where the kids really need you? Whether they're having an issue with a boyfriend or trying to start dating, and then they're having to say goodbye to relationships. I mean, that's on its own messy area all alone without the PCSing angle. All of those moments create that trust. And that trust is something that allows you to build upon it, that empathy bridge, and allows you to have a strong connection of communication. So everybody's on the same page and everybody knows kind of what we're all going through. And in the military, oftentimes we get through hard times by shared misery. And sometimes that shared misery allows you to feel together, that we're a family, we can get through it together, just like a unit, taking battle and flak. All of those moments create that connection. And I also want to finally remind you, if as a dad listening to this out there, be open and vulnerable to your chain of command if you've got an issue. Chain of commands have the ability to understand what's going on. They probably know exactly what you're feeling because they're probably family as well. And so don't just hide this pain that you're feeling or this struggle. Open up, seek help from the people above you, because there's no reward at the end of your military service for never asking for help. And the ability to ask for help is something that continues to be a strong muscle that every person serving the military should practice. And your chain of command can move mountains in some cases and connect you with things you don't even know. But you, again, have to go first with that vulnerability. So that going first and sharing what you're doing, creating that shared experience, that is, to me, is like the superpower that a dad could bring to a PCS, and then kind of like supercharge even maybe the process time that it takes to get through the whole transition period.
Then I love that. There's the power and the strength and vulnerability, right? That's not something that we really discuss and that we share often, but it's there's so much truth to that. And I also love the idea of being there for the little things so that your kids turn to you when it comes to the big things. I've definitely seen that. I'm a little bit further down the road with the parenting. My youngest is 9, but I've definitely seen where listening to those little moments about Power Rangers and Beyblades and everything else has paid off, because my kids are still coming to me with the things that are bigger and more important, and that carry a little more weight for them. So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective and that insight with us. So when we're looking at PCSs, obviously we've discussed a lot of the challenges here, and we've offered some solutions. Um, some of the solutions to the challenges that were mentioned by respondents to our annual MFLS have included offering an option to virtually enroll students in their new school before arriving, um, connecting virtually with the gaining school, whether that be the teacher, the staff, the students, however, geobadging, and homeschooling. Homeschooling has been mentioned as a way to stabilize and or support children's education. And in our 2020 MFLS, we found an increase in the number of military families who stated they were homeschooling. Kelly, I know you guys are a homeschooling family as well. So what prompted you guys to homeschool your children?
Hi, Tanya. Thank you for that question. Well, my kids are 13, almost 13. I can't believe I almost have a teenager, and 8. And we've been homeschooling them from the start, my husband and I. So that's about 8 years of homeschooling so far. Um, at first, it wasn't really a decision that I thought we would make, but we were prompted to homeschool in response to my daughter's personality and her needs, my oldest daughter. When she was young, we could see that she learned quickly and she loved learning, but we could also see that an environment that was too busy and too stimulating maybe wasn't the best environment for her to learn in. She dealt with anxiety early on. She still deals with anxiety. I love, Brittany, what you said about seeking counseling. We have had her in and out of counseling for years, and it's really helpful to her. So early on, we saw that a kindergarten classroom that was too busy and too stimulating might be a little bit too much for her. So if she can learn at home, she can learn at her own pace, she can learn according to her interests, and we really enjoy the flexibility that comes with homeschooling, especially as a military family. My kids both have a choice of if they want to continue homeschooling or if they want to go into a more traditional school setting, and they choose to continue at home, which is fine with us. We really enjoy it as a family.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for sharing. I love you kind of touched on it, but I'd love to hear more about how do you believe that this decision has been advantageous for your own family in terms of military lifestyle?
I think that it's definitely been advantageous because it's given us a unique opportunity to learn about the area around us. And as a military family, that area changes every couple of years. So we really enjoy getting to see what's local, what's regional, meeting new people, and just trying to enjoy and find delight in our military lifestyle. With homeschooling, we don't feel like we have to start over every time we PCS. We just PCSed this summer, and we really built that PCSing experience into a learning experience. So it was actually, I mean, PCSing is hard and it's a lot of work, but we found a way to make it fun and to learn as well. So we're very self directed. lifelong learning household. My husband and I are always learning something new and following our interests too. And we just feel really fortunate that we have the privilege of offering that to our kids. And homeschooling really allows us to do that.
I love that. I love the idea of really immersing yourself in your community through educating yourself and through including your education. I know my family, we've really looked at this military lifestyle as an adventure. And what better way to really just get to enjoy it than to include our schooling and things into that. Just, I love it.
I
Makes me
agree.
smile. I have enjoyed getting to hear from all of our panelists today. You guys have provided so much useful and interesting information. We've got a lot of great resources that are happening in the chat. I would like to have one last question that I'm going to put out to each of you individually, but it's the same question. And I'm going to ask each of you to take about 2 minutes to answer it. But what is the one tip you would like to share with all families who are experiencing moves and transitions with kids? Same question, every panelist. What is the one tip you would like to share with all families who are experiencing moves and transitions with kids? Nicole, let's start with you.
Thanks, Tanya. I just want to remind our viewers out here that kids are super resilient, but they also really rely on structure, security, and balance that comes from us. And so trying to find ways to connect back to your norms in the last place that you were is a really great way to get off on the right foot in a new place. So did you always go to the library for story time in your last duty station? Make sure that once you get to your new duty station, you're looking to find a library where you can get right back into those same routines. Does your family enjoy spending time in the parks? Find a park where you can create community and ground yourself in that space. And I'll also take this moment to just remind everyone that we have an amazing system of national parks that you have access to as a military family through the America the Beautiful Pass. So, finding a national park along your PCS and stopping there and then finding your home in the parks, if that's something that your family is, interested in. I think that, just making sure that we are really thinking about supporting our kids through these changes and not trying to ask too much of them in a new environment, and trying to keep hold of some of the traditions and the things that we love and that they love about where they've been and how they can transfer into where they're going.
I love that, the continuity of a location, of traditions, not necessarily of a location, but of our traditions. Brittany, what would your one tip be for families that are transitioning? Brittany, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you so much for letting me know that I'm muted. Sorry, you all. I was going to say resilience because that's what I said earlier, but Nicole, you already stole my thunder, so thank you for saying that. However, I wanted to say that just have fun. Enjoy this moment of movement where you get to go to a new location. That is a position of privilege to be able to do that, to go to a different location. I know it's difficult right now with COVID, but just make an adventure of it. Make it fun for your children. Make it fun for you. This is such a stressful time that we're living in right now with the pandemic, with so many different things that are going on, to include PCSing. So just make sure that you include some self-care moments in there for you and for children, and some down moments, and literally have fun and enjoy yourself, and give yourself a pat on the back, because this is not easy to do, to move your family from one transition in one place to the next. So have fun.
I love that. Anybody who knows me even a little bit knows that I'm like the Santa from there was this one kid's movie, and then like the heart of him was fun. That's me. The heart of me is fun. So I love that advice. Kelly, what would your advice be?
I really would just echo what Brittany and Nicole have already said, but have fun, include your kids in the planning aspect. We just PCSed over the summer, and my oldest daughter had a pretty difficult time with that. She didn't want to leave her friends and her home in Missouri. And so we were brainstorming together to see, okay, what are some things that you might be able to do to make the best of this, to make it suck a little bit less, as she said. And she started filming just a little video diary of the move, and that ended up being a lot of fun. My youngest daughter, she got to pick a lot of the music, so we listened to a lot of Hamilton, and we picked stops along the way and explored a little bit, and it just ended up being not as not as difficult of an experience, but a lot more fun and a lot more laid back than previous moves have gone.
I hear you. There's something about transitioning with teens, right? You said your daughter's almost 13, where they're at that point in their lives where there's so little that's under their control that any amount of control that we can give them really seems to help with the transition. I know we did that our last PCS, and it definitely made things a little bit smoother for us. Ben, what about you? What's your 2-minute tip?
I would pick up on what everybody else is saying and kind of frame it this way that our reality can be really shaped by the words that we use with our kids. And the word that I would kind of season this process with is adventure. And that growth happens when we get uncomfortable. So if this is something kind of your language within your family of adventure, going on things, doing hard things and like overcoming challenges as a natural progression of how your family lives life, then the PCSing isn't something that you need to be afraid of. It's something that they already experience throughout the entire time, whether they're there for 3 years or 6 years, however long. Like adventure and discomfort is something they get used to, and they understand that this is how I grow. And so our language as parents can help shape how our kids see this process. If they see us worrying about it, if they see us getting frustrated, if they see us yelling, they're just going to soak in the emotions, because sometimes they don't know how to feel. So they look around us to absorb how we feel. And so we have a rare opportunity to really set that this is discomfort, this is growth. But if we frame it as an adventure, that adventure can take us and grow us into places we don't yet know. And so this is just how we live our life. And it's not something that just happens and interrupts it. It's no, this is how we live our life of growing through adventure.
Yes, yes, adventure. I tell my people all the time that my boys and I have had some really great adventures together through this lifestyle. And the concept of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that applies to so many different aspects of our lives. So I really appreciate that word as well. Georgia, what about you? 2-minute tip advice for families that are moving.
So my tip is a little different from what we've heard from the other panelists, and that's that you don't have to do this by yourself. So there's a lot of partners nationally and even locally that have aligned themselves with supporting military-connected families. And so they've done the research for you, they've collected the content for you. I told you a lot about the resources available at MSEC, but I know that our partners at Sesame Workshop have a whole page devoted to resources for military families, including guides on how to have tough conversations with your children. There's tons of stuff on Military One Source, on the MIC3 webpage, from Blue Star Families, from your local school liaison, both where you're leaving and where you're going. Your school counselor. There's a lot of resources available for you, and you don't have to do this by yourself. So don't feel like you have to be the master of all these conversations with your children, or you have to know how to transfer everything, or those kinds of difficult things that are going to come up as you're on this adventure. There's lots of resources from a lot of reputable, well-researched communities and groups that can help support you as you embrace this journey.
Awesome. Thank you. And now it's my turn for my 2-minute tip for everybody. So I would love to echo a lot of what's been said already: fun, adventure, resilience. But on a more practical note, because again, I do have older kids, and so I get that it's a little bit different depending on what age you're transitioning. Um, Probably one of the most practical tips that I have found in my experience so far is whenever I am stuck on how to get something done, um, I go to the Department of Education website for the state that we're moving to. I don't go to the district website. I don't go to the school website. I go to the Department of Education for the state and I type in military families, because a lot of states have things and laws, not just practices, but laws in place for military families. And I found that having that knowledge and having that information in hand whenever I'm asking for something really helps to get the understanding of why I'm asking for what I'm asking for, and why it's not any kind of special thing. It's not any kind of exception, but like this is the rule that I'm following when I ask for this service or this placement or this whatever for my child. It's not something that I necessarily would have thought of before I started transitioning older children to like be like, well, what are the laws on this? But that is my practical tip. I know it's not necessarily as fun as like look for fun and look for adventure, but let me tell you, it has saved my sanity and it has saved my children's placement a couple of times. So that's my tip for you guys. We have a couple of minutes left, so we're going to get to some of the questions that have been popping up in the chat. So I am excited to do that. What are we going to start with first? I can't scroll the chat. There we go. Let's start with, we had one question regarding homeschool and navigating the homeschool laws in different states. Kelly, can you speak to that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, because as a homeschooling mother, it is the first thing I look for. Whenever I find out that we're going to PCS somewhere, I start scouring the internet for all of the homeschooling resources, homeschooling laws, everything that I can find in the state. And I also join a lot of the local Facebook groups, because you can get a lot of great information from veteran homeschoolers in those groups. When we find out that we're going to PCS somewhere, going to the Department of Education website, if you look up homeschool laws, homeschooling is legal in all 50 states. The laws might vary a little bit from state to state. So the first thing that you want to do is get yourself familiar with those laws, find out what's going to be expected from you as far as hours, as far as record keeping, and just go from there.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, I see a question from Lisa about grade schools. Lisa, I'm gonna tell you, grade schools is not my favorite source for reviews and information on schools. I find that it is biased. It is biased towards race. It is biased towards income level. I think a more reliable source is Niche. That's a great resource to look up school ratings. Also, again, Department of Education. They review all of their schools. They'll tell you what the school standards are. They'll tell you what is being met. Also, looking at the local schools PTA. Everybody rates schools a little bit differently. What I look for in a good school is not necessarily what you would be looking for or what Brittany would be looking for. So I think it's really important to kind of put that personal touch on it. So if you can get in touch with someone that's a part of the PTA or a parent in the school, that can give you a little more insight, rather than just looking at a grade school's rating. That's my opinion. I know that others have found that to be true as well. But yeah, that's a great question. And then I also see your question that as a military veteran and a teacher who is currently studying school counseling, how can you do outreach for families in your community? And I think Brittany is the perfect person to answer that question, because those are all things that she's familiar with.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. And thank you, Lisa, for asking that question. If you are currently a teacher working at a school, I would definitely say collaborate with your school counselor. School counselors are waiting for teachers to come up to them and say, hey, I have this project, I have this idea, I want to reach out more to my students. How do I do so? and gain ideas from that person. They probably have a list or an email chain of parents that you can connect with and give you information about more kids who are in the military community or in your community in general. If you're going to school for school counseling, good luck. Awesome. That is amazing. We definitely need more people in the field. I'm so excited to hear that. But there are just so many multiple ways you can reach out to families. You can, write them. You can do a newsletter. You can incorporate technology. There's so much different technology out there to get parents involved and get students involved. So definitely go to your school district, ask your principal, and also ask your school counselor if you all can collaborate on that. I hope that answers your question.
I love that. Ben, as a military veteran as well, what advice do you have for Lisa? I'm sorry.
For connecting to the military families?
Yes, sir.
So within this one, I think a lot of it starts with going where they are. So the most underrated, powerful tool that we have in the human language is hello. And military families coordinate in different areas, whether it be connecting with Blue Star families near a military base or going where there's military events that are organized for military families, going in there with this idea that your hello is those basic tools that you have as a person, a human being, to really bridge a connection to other people that you don't even really understand and not know, but that maybe need to know you. And so we can often lean towards technology and all these different fancy tools, but still, I've had more amazing conversations through the old-fashioned way of saying hello to a random stranger than I ever have on Facebook. And it's almost the old-fashioned way in this particular case is going to find probably the family that really needs you, because you can probably see it on their face before you say hello. And you just going in and saying hello and helping someone be seen. I think as a military family, we can easily become invisible and sometimes or feel we're invisible. So I think the idea of going and finding where military families are organized and going in there with the hello, I think it's even more powerful, even just trying to connect online and do it that way, because giving someone the gift of being seen is just as powerful as anything else you can give them.
Yes, I love that, being seen. Kelly, I think you had a really quick tip for Lisa, and then we have one more question that we're going to jump to from Georgia in our last couple of minutes.
Sure. I just wanted to mention, Lisa, I'm an Air Force spouse. On base, you can find an Airman and Family Readiness Center, and they often have an educational liaison. So that might be a good place to check out.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly. So our last question is related to the MIC3 and giftedness. Georgia, you want to answer that one for us real quick?
Sure. So the question was about whether receiving schools have to honor placements in gifted and talented programs. And the answer to that is yes, they do. And at the beginning, they're expected to honor the assessments conducted at the sending school. Upon receipt of a new student, they are allowed to reevaluate the student and make sure they qualify for gifted services in the receiving state based on whatever the criteria is in that state or district. But they are expected at the beginning to honor the previous placement and place the student in the services, special ed, gifted, anything like that. And then upon their assessment, they're allowed to move forward in accordance with whatever the policy is where they are.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And we are down to our last minute. You guys, this has been so much fun. As I said before, there's a lot of really great resources that are in the chat. So feel free to check those out, visit the web pages, copy them down. This has been a really great hour. It went really quickly. Thanks to our panelists, everyone, for being here. I love getting to hear from you all and learn from you all, and share your experiences. Look forward to our next Facebook Live event. We will be back in September, and we'll be connecting with you all next month as we celebrate Blue Star Welcome Week. So make sure if you're in an area with a local chapter of Blue Star Families to connect with them so you can see what some of the Welcome Week events are that are going to be going on in the area around you. Help us either welcome a new family to the area if you've already been there for a while, or if you are new to the area yourself, take part and be welcomed. Like I said, again, thank you all for tuning in with us for the last hour. This has been absolutely wonderful, and we're looking forward to seeing you all again next month.